1. This occurred when I was about 8 years old and lived with my family in Brazil. My aunt was in the hospital for liver issues, and everyone in the family had accepted that she would not be around for a while. Since our house was bigger than my other relatives, everyone decided that it was best for her to stay at our place. Later on, she was transferred to the hospital, and my mom and relatives would take time to visit her. Just to give some background, my family can be a bit superstitious, and my mom was no exception. Since everyone knew that my aunt could not be saved, there was always this dark feeling lingering throughout the house. Due to this, I was always scared to go to the bathroom at nights. I shared a bed with my sister, and it was the only way I had peace of mind to fall asleep. On this particular night, I could feel myself almost pissing my pants. My dad never liked any of the lights on because of the expensive electricity bills, so I was always afraid he would yell at me if I turned them on. My only hope was to wake my sister, but she was so deep in her sleep and didn't wake no matter the number of times I pulled at her hair. I couldn't hold it in anymore, and decided that I was going to make a run for it. I was going to run to the bathroom, which was down the hall, pee and run back. Now, in Brazil, I should note that houses are closely situated. Our bathroom was next to the kitchen with large windows, and my neighbor's porch dimly lit our entire kitchen. This was always calming to think of, since I knew I won't be in complete darkness after all. I jumped out of bed and ran to the kitchen, opened the fridge and grabbed a piece of fruit and ran into the toilet. Yes, I know eating on the toilet is gross, but I was 8 and didn't care about germs at the time. So I'm sitting on the toilet peeing and eating when I heard crackling noises in the kitchen. Since my mom would wake around 4:30 to cook and travel to my aunt's hospital room in time for breakfast at 6 a.m., I figured my mom must have been awake. I called out for her, but no one answered. After the crackling grew continuously, I looked over at the kitchen clock. I didn't know how to read time proficiently, but I could tell it was around 4 a.m. I got a bit scared and I tried to look closer into the darkness. That is exactly when I saw the shadow of a woman staring at me. I could barely make out her face as the kitchen was dimly lit from the neighbor's porch light. The thing is, the woman's body shape appeared to look exactly like my mom's, so I remember saying, "Mama, you need to use the bathroom?" In Portuguese, of course, and the person never responded. I figured she was getting ready to go visit my aunt, but was just a little tired. The figure kept staring into my direction. I couldn't see her eyes or face. I just knew that whoever it was, they were looking at my direction and had a womanly figure. It is fair to note that all this occurred in under 3 minutes, as I was done peeing. I got up from the toilet and said goodnight, Mom, and ran back to the bedroom. As I was running down the hall to the bedroom, I looked back and saw her turn facing me as she sat down at the kitchen table. I went back into the room to see my sister still asleep. I cuddled up against her and fell asleep right away. The next morning, around 9 a.m., I woke up to my mom cooking in the kitchen. I ran to ask her how my aunt was, and ask what she was cooking. I told her that I saw her in the kitchen the night before, and asked why she didn't say anything to me. My mom's face looked really puzzled, and she kept asking me to explain exactly what I saw. She looked very worried and called my father, and kept asking me if I'm sure I wasn't dreaming. I insisted to her that I wasn't because I knew I was awake and had experienced this. My mom later told me that she had asked the nurse to stay with my aunt all night in the hospital, and she wasn't home all night, and that my dad was working night shift, so my sister and I were home alone. This scared the living shit out of me because I knew that I saw someone. I knew I wasn't dreaming. My mom believed in paranormal stuff and told me that it could have been an angel coming to bless our house since my aunt was in the hospital. But I don't believe in any of that stuff, not even as a child. Still, to this day, I can't figure out who that woman was, staring into my direction and not saying a word, whoever she is. I hope we never meet again. 2. About 12 years ago, I was working at a small family-run pizza restaurant in a rural Virginia town. Shortly after I began working there, the town had some sort of festival. I was working the day shift and we were dead. Finally, a customer arrived. He was a middle-aged man, short in stature, pretty normal guy. I'd never seen him before. He seemed a little distracted and asked for a water. It was hot that day, so I got him a water and took down his order to go. Being the young, 22, and friendly gal I was, I attempted to engage him in small talk. Things were normal. I can't recall what the conversation was, but I distinctly remember a point in our chit-chat where his demeanor changed, and he got a weird look in his eyes. Something felt off with this guy, but it wasn't long before his order was ready, so I shrugged it off and finished my shift. Over the course of a few months, he'd come in, usually in the evenings, and order his usual to-go meal. He always asked for a beer while he waited, specifically the Italian beer Peroni. He was familiar with the staff, and I later learned he had a reputation as a bit of a creeper. I worked with a young lady named Dawn. He seemed exceedingly interested in her. We had a jukebox, and he always played a song that had her name in it. After a while, he started playing a few songs he knew I liked. I started to develop a sinking feeling whenever I saw him come in. He'd place his usual order, drink a few Peronis, play songs on the jukebox, and just watch us while we worked. Creepy, yes, but he wasn't crossing any lines at the time. More time goes by, and Dawn leaves for another job. He seemed upset when he realized she left. But soon his full attention turned to me. By this time, management had informed me that he had creepy tendencies, and had been asked to leave on several occasions. This was usually because of customer complaints that he was leering at small children. Yikes. I even asked our local law enforcement about him, and they warned me to be very careful with this guy. I never learned specifics, but there was talk of him being a sex offender. One night I was closing up. Peroni Guy had already made an appearance that night. It was probably 11:30 when I left to go home. It was extremely dark outside, as this was the country, and no streetlights were around. I lived by myself a few minutes away in a little apartment over a local business. I started to drive home when I noticed a vehicle behind me. Not particularly strange, but it did grab my attention. My stomach dropped when I realized it was him. Peroni Guy drove a 1957 Bel Air, turquoise and white, very distinctive, and definitely the only car of its kind in town. My heart started racing. Obviously I wasn't going home, so I called my boyfriend at the time and told him I was going to come over and why. I made a quick turn on this long back country road, with no lights on anywhere and few houses. Driving into the pitch-black darkness was unsettling, but I wasn't from the area, and honestly could get lost in a circular room, so taking this route that was out of my routine just fueled my anxiety. Anyway, I continued driving into the darkness, my heart racing. He was keeping up. Every turn I made, he did the same. I increased my speed, and so did he. What should have been a 5-minute drive home turned into roughly 40 minutes of him tailing me before I finally lost him. I made it to my boyfriend's house absolutely shaking with fear. For weeks I was on the lookout for him. I left that job shortly after. I only saw him one more time after that. I was in a store and noticed him browsing through the clothing section. He didn't see me, so I hauled ass and left. I'm 34 years old now. If I knew then what I know now, I would have driven right to the police station. But at the time, I absolutely panicked when I realized he was following me. A few years later, I had an ex-boyfriend stalk me, and it's been nearly 10 years, and I haven't experienced any more stalking incidents that I'm aware of. That feeling of being hunted, like you're someone's prey, is one I'll never forget. So, Peroni Guy, let's not meet again. 3. A little background info is necessary. I was 17 when I met him, naive and frankly stupid. My parents divorced when I hit double digits, and that didn't ever really bother me. I have 5 brothers and was never really lonely. My dad was very abusive though, and to this day I still have PTSD. I'm not afraid of a lot of things and stand up to bullies now because of my past. But at 17, I just wanted to party and find someone who seemed like they cared. Enter JD. I met him at a party held at the house he was renting. I remember thinking it was so run down. He lived there with a girl named Timnisha. and another guy whose name I don't recall. It wasn't instant attraction, but he gave me a lot of positive attention, and I ate that shit up. We started dating about a week later. It was a pretty normal relationship, I guess. He didn't have a lot of money because his 2 roommates moved out, and he was paying for a home and all his bills on his own. And as an understanding girlfriend, I was using my wages to buy him food and cleaning to help out. If I didn't do them, they didn't get done. He had 2 jobs. He claimed he was a mechanic at a local car dealership, and overnights at the Target warehouse in the next town over. I was, of course, still in high school full-time and was working as a CNA after classes and overnights at times. Looking back now, there were a lot of red flags. He lied a lot about how he shot this rabbit and cooked it up for me, and how he fixed this huge lifted diesel, how he was in the military and would go on these special missions to make a shitload of cash, and how his dad was rich, but they were estranged. His grandparents did live in the town, but I had never seen or met his parents. After about 4 months of dating, he moved in with a few people from my class who had graduated early. It was pretty cool. We would have bonfires and cookouts together. As per usual with these stories, it didn't last long. It started to unravel by month 6. I found out from my grandparents, who went to buy a new van from the dealership he worked at, that he was a detailer. The guy who cleans the cars, not fixes them. I confronted him and he admitted he was just embarrassed, which I understood and let it go. When I asked to see his military ID, he would freak out and say it was top secret, that he was in the force and I shouldn't be doubting him if I loved him. I didn't love him. I have never lied in a relationship like that, and even though he would say it to me, I would never say it back. When I wouldn't say it back, he would have these weird fits. He would flail around, so I eventually stopped riding in his car with him, cry and scream, like a child. I have a very low tolerance for bullshit and my patience was wearing thin. My friends were commenting on how he acted if I hung out with them, about how he acted around them if I wasn't there, and there were huge inconsistencies. Around my friends he was super rude and aggressive, even getting in my male friend's face, claiming he had checked me out the last time I had been over. The guy I was dating was super chill and laid back. I almost didn't believe them, but why would they lie? The last straw was his hygiene. He stopped bathing, brushing his teeth, everything. I couldn't be near him. I knew I had to break up with him. It was a month before my 18th birthday, and I wanted out of the relationship. I wasn't emotionally connected to him, and he was really cutting into my plans for the future. One day I got off of work about 6 p.m. because I had enough hours, so they sent me home. He had been blowing up my phone all day, and I just responded that I didn't feel well, so I was going to go home and veg out. At the time, my mom was dating my now stepdad, whom I adore and is an angel, so she wasn't home, and all of my brothers were out doing various things. It was rare to be home alone, so I threw on a Lord of the Rings movie in the living room and sat on the couch bundled up, because my stomach did actually hurt. After about 10 minutes there was a knock on the door. JD had decided to come over even though I had told him not to. I lived about half an hour away from him, so he had intentionally ignored me and decided to come over. I let him in and was a little pissed off because I didn't feel well, and I guess that pushed me over the edge because I decided to break up with him. I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. When I turned out from the fridge, he was there and tried to kiss me. He smelled terrible, and of course I pushed him back. That's when I saw the deep wound on his wrist. No, he had not cut himself. He bit through to the bone. I grabbed his hand and asked him what the hell had happened. "I thought I made you angry," he told me. Because he thought I was mad at him a few days prior, he bit down to his bone. It was clearly infected, probably from his non-existent hygiene habits. I told him right then and there, I don't want to date him, it's time to break up. I am moving away in a few months, and I didn't want him to follow me to college. He took it pretty well. I let him go outside and went downstairs to hide in my room because the ground level of my house was like a huge fishbowl with all the windows, so he was watching me. I heard my front door open, and knowing odds are it's one of my brothers, I head up to tell him I broke up with my boyfriend, in case he tried to contact one of them. It was him. He sat on my living room floor sobbing silently, hammering his phone with a tool my mom had left out because she had just fixed the trim in the living room. After kicking him out and locking the door, I continued to hear his loud car roaring past my house, circling the block. Not going to lie, I was legit a little afraid. I don't think he would hurt me, but I know he was kind of crazy from things my friends had told me. I sent out a massive SOS, and my best friend Chelsea told me I could hide out at her place. I called the local sheriff to stall him. My mom is a lawyer, so she was pretty cozy with the local law. And when he was pulled over, I jetted out of there. I took every back road I knew, having the advantage of growing up in the country, and made it to my friend's place. JD had never gone there with me, so I knew he wouldn't know where to look for my car. I turned off my phone and watched the old cartoon version of The Hobbit. There was a huge thunderstorm that night, so every loud noise made me jumpy, but I eventually passed out and got a little sleep. The next morning I woke up to 15 voicemails and 75 texts, going from telling me he loved me, proposing, taking it back, calling me a whore, accusing me of cheating, accusing me of being at a guy's house, and then reverting back to telling me he loved me. I have no idea how he texted after he busted up his phone. The next few weeks did not get any better. He would call me at all times, threatening to kill himself, telling me I ruined his life, saying I changed him to be a better man, etc., etc. Insert eye roll here. He had a very distinct car that made very distinct noises, so I knew when he was circling my house, or I would catch the noise of it out of the windows of the nursing home I was employed at. Found out that he told a lot of mutual friends that I was pregnant, and that he would be moving to live with his father before the baby was born. What the fuck? After multiple times, my male co-workers would come inside advising me that he had been outside parked next to my car, crying, and they had scared him away. Thank God for jacked male nurses. The next month didn't get any better. Not because I missed him, but because he went full-blown stalker crazy. He would text me about my outfits, about what hours I worked, about where I was or who I was with. I had a really old cell phone, so didn't know how to block his number. He would threaten to kill himself unless I dated him again at least twice a day. I am very passionate about suicide awareness, but it literally came to the point that I would tell him to do it and hang up. I was over the calls every day, and it made me paranoid. I started carrying a big-ass Bowie knife strapped to my ankle and stopped going out with my friends. Around 6 weeks after we broke up, it calmed a little bit, and my mom called me dying of laughter. Being a lawyer, she was the one in charge of the free courthouse weddings on Friday mornings in our town with her boss, who was the magistrate. My mother, whom my boyfriend knew, married him to a girl he pretty much lied to over the internet and who moved to our town for him. She is in all their wedding photos. It got better with the new girl in the picture, though it didn't stop. It came down to me messaging his new wife, sending her screenshots of me telling him to fuck off after he would proposition me for sex, or ask me to marry him, or anything like that. It stopped when I moved to college a few months later. He randomly pops into my life. I just turned 25 and can't seem to shake him. He called me when I was 21, asking me for a reference from me to join the military. I accepted and told the hiring officer how unstable and crazy he was. He still got into the military. Last time I heard from him was about 6 months ago. He makes new Facebooks under the dumbest names. Last one was Butt Chuck. To message me long apologies about how the experience must have been horrible for me, and how he would love to reconnect. So JD, let's not meet again. I will beat the shit out of you, and then let my brothers have a go. Edit 5718. So I brought up to my mom how I had shared this story, and she had some more dirt for me. Apparently, he would come over to our house when all my siblings and I were gone and shovel my mom's sidewalks, call her mom, and try to get into the house to talk to her. My mom said she felt bad, so she would invite him in for lunch sometimes. But he would never get the social cues to leave, and she would have to pretend to get a client call and leave the house so he would go away. He told her all the time that he was going to be the best son-in-law in the world and would make her really proud. My mom is hella chill, so she just brushed him off, but did admit she was really worried that he might go crazy and hurt me. Almost 2 months after he got married, I went to Walmart to get tampons. This is relevant, otherwise I wouldn't say it. And after walking around while I went to the front to pay, the checkout girl was this tiny girl. I say girl because I think we were the same age. She rang up my item, put it in a bag, and then stared at me. Not like waiting for me to pay, but legit just trying to see my soul. I went to swipe my card and it wasn't on the right screen, so I had to ask her to hit the button. She stared at the item in the bag and then back at me. "Are you?" she asked, while using my name. I looked at my best friend and then back at this tiny girl. Yeah? "Oh, I'm Alicia. I'm JD's wife." She got super excited and came around the register with her arms open. "He told me you were buying tampons. I thought it was you." She tried to hug me. I had to hold up a hand and look to my friend for help. My friend stepped up and blocked her. Alicia went back to behind the register, and as I could finally swipe my card and enter my PIN, she was ranting and raving about how pretty I was, about how we should be friends, and how JD still cares for me. But she knows that he loves her too, etc., etc. I get the fuck out. It was just super creepy that my ex's wife wanted to be my friend. They are still married. The fact that he was somewhere in Walmart and I hadn't seen him, he had messaged his wife, and that he was probably still around really speaks volumes as well for how crazy they both must be. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 290. Thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Just going to give you the weekly reminder that we're getting towards episode 300, won't be long now. If you have any questions you'd like to add to the Q&A, please just pop them in the comments section of any video. I'll be going through and capping them soon, but you can ask basically right up till, I don't know, say the week before I do the video, because the Q&A will just be added on at the end. Okie dokie, and with that, I think I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.